and they're on for judicial review in lieu of a panel. We're doing this virtually on Zoom. Let's see who all we have. The attorney and guardian ad litem for the minor children, Ms. Schrock, Mr. Lyles, the dad, Mr. Overman, the attorney for defects, Ms. Riddle, the attorney for Mr. Lyles, Mr. Moore, the case manager, the Hemmings, who are the foster. Well, you don't have all four of the children, do you? Which two do you have?
We just have Jacob and Jordan, the twins.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And since what date?
May 18th, 2022.
Coming up on 2-year anniversary. Goodness.
Yes, it is.
All right. Let's see. And then we have Ms. Whaley with Mr. Overman's office and Ms. Crane, who's the attorney for the mother, Alicia Lyles, who is not with us. I don't think she's missed several hearings.
Do we know if she's incarcerated again, Judge?
I don't know. Don't have any note in my file. McDonough, which was in the file, which she says is still the most recent address we've been provided.
Okay.
Jessica looked and she's not in the Henry County Jail, which doesn't mean she's not somewhere else. But I thought the two older girls, are they still with a relative?
They're still with Miss Hatfield, Judge, and I don't see her on. I know she knew about the hearing. In fact, Mr. Moore was up there, I think, this past week, and we'll let him talk about that.
All right, Mr. Overman, if you want to give us your summary.
Not much has changed since the last hearing. Our understanding that the mother advised she surrendered her rights. I think at one of our last hearings, Ms. Crane even said, well, since she surrendered her rights, does she need to stay on? She surrendered her rights to her parents, the maternal grandparent. I understand she's been very inconsistent with visits. She hasn't really visited with the kids in person for over a year. She's had some virtual and some contact with the kids. That's our understanding, my understanding at least. As you see, Mr. Lyles is out of jail, out of prison, and he has been visiting with the kids. Of course, his mother has the two oldest, and their sibling visits, and I think Mr. Moore will confirm and explain through question after I give the summary.
I thought you said Ms. Hatfield had the two oldest.
Yes, the two oldest, Ms. Hatfield.
That's his grandmother.
I'm sorry. Yes, it's Mr. Lyles' mother.
No, it's Mr. Lyles' grandmother. So it's great grandmother.
I'm sorry.
Right, Mr. Lyles? Did you, Ms. Hatfield, your grandmother raised you?
Right? Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. That's what I thought.
I'm sorry, Judge. Yes, that's what I meant to say. As far as screens, Mom hadn't had a screen since.
Well, if she surrendered and the 10 days certainly passed for rescission, that is a good explanation as to why she's no longer participating. But
we haven't terminated on her, Judge.
I
understand.
All right.
Okay, but she hasn't taken any screens in over a year. And she's refused a bunch, positive a bunch, etc. All were positive for fentanyl, of course. So we haven't really had any screens or anything. She refused, of course, to work with the department, contested every action. I haven't seen the voluntary surrenders, but I know there's a case in Superior Court that Mr. Harding is on that represents the maternal grandparents. That is asking to terminate on everybody and get the kids. So
Wait. Oh, all four kids or the two oldest kids that you have surrenders on the mother?
it's all four, Judge. She is actually, they have actually filed in Superior Court. Judge Amara's got the case. Todd Harding
She's found
represents.
surrenders on all four kids?
Yes, but the father, of course, is contesting, I think.
Well, who is this? I'm not familiar with that lawyer's name. Is he representing Ms. Hatfield, who's trying to adopt all four?
No, he is representing the maternal grandparents.
Okay.
Mom's.
And their name is what?
I'm sorry?
What is their name?
It's Heather and
Blues.
Nathan Ballou.
The Blues.
Okay.
They actually had the twins for a short while back in 22, I think, or before we moved them, 22, 23. So that case is going on. Of course, we filed for termination as well.
So wait, hold on just a second. Let me make sure I understand. Did the mother sign surrenders to the agency or to her parents, the Ballous?
To her parents, not
Okay.
to the agency.
Okay.
And of course, we weren't served.
Have you intervened in the adoption?
We have prepared an intervener. They have subpoenaed our records, which we have filed a motion to quash, which I'm sure a motion for in-camera inspection. Let's put it that way, to quash or an in-camera inspection. So that hearing, I think, is coming up in May for that. There's a lot going on with the case since then, but as far as the dad, he has had a screen. You can tell if you look at dad, his hair is not long enough to do a hair follicle. So they weren't able to process that, do a hair follicle, but they did a urine and it was clean. I don't know in times past if the court has advised dad that, we need to have some hair for
Don't cut your hair, Mr. Lyles, again. Until they get a hair follicle from you.
I don't know if he heard you, Judge.
I don't know how he couldn't have heard me.
Well, he hadn't answered.
He said he's muted, so I don't know what he's doing. Oh, he's hitting the screen.
There you go.
I was trying to get it unmuted. I was told
Thought
to
you were
mute.
swatting flies.
Mr. Lyles, did you hear the judge about your hair?
Yes, sir.
Don't cut your hair till they get a hair sample from you. Okay? I don't know. It shouldn't take more than a couple of months, but you look like you're pretty skinned right now.
That's what happens when you start balding. You don't want anybody to see it like
yeah,
you
but
see
you
it.
got get over it. It ain't gonna do any good unless you got the money to pay for the plugs or the whatever else they do, which doesn't always work apparently. But let it grow out. They can get it off the back of your neck. They can get it all over as long as it gets out long enough.
Understood.
As far as the children, Judge, they're doing well. They're up to date on medical and dental. It says that there are no behavioral concerns for Jada. There are no issues, no medications. Same thing for Jalen. Jacob is doing well behaviorally. He interacts well with other youth in daycare, no concerns. And it says Jordan is typical behavior for her age, developmental level, and not concerns at this time for them. So of course, Dad is out now. I think he has done some assessments. And as I say, that would be my report. I would like for Mr. Moore, who has been sworn in, to testify on his latest findings when he went up to Tecumseh County. I think that he actually went there. There was evidently a report by another child in the Miss Hatfield's home. My understanding was that there was an issue with discipline or something to that effect, and I'll get Mr. Moore. That's the only other thing that I've got. If I can inquire to him about that.
Sure.
Okay. Mr. Moore, can you, first of all, is all the information I've identified in my summary true and correct to the best of your knowledge?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd report, particularly about your latest visit or trip to Coosa County?
Um, not really. We had a discussion last week about discipline actions in the home. But our report was unfounded. It was actually investigated by Catoosa County DFACS.
Okay.
So I just was up there for a follow-up, but there was no evidence of maltreatment or anything like that found it.
Okay.
At least that. So the only thing I would say is that over the weekend, I think it was late Friday evening, Mr. Lyles did send me a lease agreement. So he has secured apartment, I think it was. And he's been working his own business, and it seemed like it's been doing pretty good.
Okay. The issue was housing for him is when he was released. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. So the thing was, he did assessments in his previous case. He had completed most of the he had completed everything but the housing and the income in terms of his previous case before he got incarcerated. And so when
Okay.
he did his follow-up assessments, the assessments revealed that he just should follow the recommendations from the old assessments in a way. And we could put him back through, the treatment or whatever if need be.
Okay. Anything else as far as with the children or with mom? I know you've talked about dad.
I last had contact with mom the beginning of the month on through a phone call. And at that time, she told me she had a court hearing coming up for her criminal case that she was in jail for last year. I'm not sure what the date exactly was. She got upset and hung up on me when I asked her about if she wanted to do visits with the kids. It was more like she feels like we are helping the father and not helping her.
Okay. And so there's still criminal charges as far as you know with the mom?
Yes, sir. They still pending. She just out on bond.
Okay. I think that's all I have, Judge, for the report.
Before I forget, Mr. Lyles, I'm going to come back to Mr. Moore in a minute, but Mr. Lyles, tell us your current mailing address where we can send mail to you.
1-10.
Okay, so you're living up near your grandmother?
Correct.
How far away are you from her house?
Probably 2 miles.
Are you, do you and she get along? I know you used to, just don't know.
Of course. Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, so is she letting you see the kids that are with her
Yes, sir.
pretty much whenever you want? You drop by after work or on the weekends or whatever?
Yes, sir.
All right. How about your other two children? How do you see them?
Whenever they get transported, I see them.
Okay.
It's usually, I mean, typically it's like, as long as I'm not too busy with work, it's usually once a week.
Okay. Tell me about your work. What are you doing?
I started a LLC. It's kind of like general construction. It's called His Hands Handyman Service LLC.
Okay. And how long have you been doing that?
Since October of last year.
When did you get out of jail?
September 18th.
You got any probation or parole left?
Yes. Till 2035.
You really won't have any hair by then if you're losing it as fast as you said.
It's getting bad.
Do us all a favor and your kids a favor and don't give them any cause to revoke your probation because you'll be gone. So we won't be around if they revoked all your probation that you got left. Jeez.
I'm in pretty good standings, Your Honor. My probation officer is willing to come to the TPR hearing to speak on my behalf.
That's good of him. All right, let me ask some questions for the my checklist. I'll tell you what, let me stop there. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Moore or for Mr. Lyles before I go through the checklist?
I do, Your Honor. I have questions for both.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Moore. How are you this morning?
I'm doing good.
I have a couple of questions about your report. You indicated that there's only one licensed drug tester in Catoosa, and that there's been some issues with that. Can you explain that a little bit more?
So in conversations with Catoosa County DFACS, they use this clinic up there called Med First. And there's been numerous times where I would send Chris by there. They would, I think one time he went by there, they didn't have a screener in house. One time he got there like about 4:45, he had to wait an hour. Then they told him they needed some paperwork or something like that from me. So it's just been inconsistencies with the screener up there because they send them to the med clinic.
So in your report, there was an indication that he was supposed to take a hair follicle in February. Have you sent him since then to take another one? And because of the issues with the examiner, he hasn't been able to take another one?
He just hadn't had no hair. That was the issue that day, was his hair. And how they reported it back to me was he didn't have hair on his head or his body.
Right. But the question that I'm asking is, since then, have you asked him to go take another test and he hasn't been able to because of the location where he's taking the test?
Since then, I think we did try to do another test. And I want to say he made it there. That's the time when he made it there. And it was like, I think they told him they didn't have a screener or something like that. But not a hair follicle, though. It's just been urine screens only.
Okay. All right. That's helpful. Thank you. You mentioned Mr. Lyle's services. You said that he completed his case plan before he went to prison. Other than the drug screens right now, is there anything else outstanding that he needs to complete?
I would have to review the rest of his assessments, but from my knowledge, off top, no. The drug screens, the housing, and the income was Mr. Lyle's major outstanding issues he had.
And other than the drug screens, he's taking care of the housing and the income?
Well, he just sent the housing lease agreement on Friday, so I can't say that he's maintained stable housing at this time, but he's working towards it.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Moore. That's all the questions I have for Mr. Moore, Judge.
Okay. You had a
Your
question
Honor,
for the client?
I have a question for him.
Okay.
Mr. Moore, have the foster parents, the Hemmings, have they asked permission from the department to be able to obtain passports for the children?
Yes, ma'am.
Is the department giving them permission to do that?
We would have to, because the parents' rights are not terminated, we'll have to go through the parents.
Okay, so at this time, the department has not been able to give them permission to obtain the passports then, is that right?
No, ma'am, but we have Mr. Lyles here, if you want to ask.
Okay, well, I think that, I don't know that would be helpful to the Hemmings. They would need the parent, either the department to give to give permission, since the department has custody of the children. And they have been asking me about it, so I wanted to touch base with you on that.
So normally what happens is when the foster parent asks us about permission to travel, if the parents' rights are not terminated, we ask the parents about permission to travel. If the parents say no, most times we'll come back to court and ask the judge for permission to just override the parents. And in this situation, it would be the same thing.
Well, how do you override the parents about a passport? I don't know if you can. I don't know. I haven't had that issue come up.
it's my understanding, Judge, that the court can approve travel, but any documents such as passports or whatnot, the parents actually have to get those and give them to the Hemmings.
Well, but y'all don't need to leave the Hemmings out hanging. You know, the mom is not going to consent to that. So if they have to have the permission of both parents, even though right now they're not custodial parents, then they just need to make arrangements for respite care so they can do whatever traveling they want to do.
Understood.
Would you approve of them getting a passport to go with the Hemmings, Mr. Lyles?
I'm against them traveling out of the country. I have been on board with them traveling out of state.
Where were you planning to go, Mr. and Ms. Hemmings?
Your Honor, my husband has family in Jamaica, and we would love for the twins to be able to visit, family in Jamaica. And we're also going to make it into a vacation, of course.
Sure.
Last year we weren't able to go, so we did have respite for the twins, but we were just hoping, since they're part of our family, that they would be able to travel.
I understand wholeheartedly, and I've had a couple of parents who I thought, it's a big trip to go out of country. I've heard that is a very nice location to go vacation, but unless there's some provision for me to overrule the parents' objection, and I'd have to hear what their objections are. Like the last parent I had that objected to their teenage son going out of the country, wasn't even out of the country, wanted to go to Disney World with his foster parents, and mom said he was a bad boy and he didn't deserve to go. And so I let him go anyway. This is a little different in terms of passport, and I don't know what the rules are. I know that you've got to have a parent, at least one parent, to give consent to get an adoption, and you may have to have both. I just don't know the rule. So
I've done
when are you going on the trip?
we're planning on going June or July. We haven't really set solid plans because we wanted to know, ahead of time.
You got to get, what are they telling you to do? How far in advance do you need to get a passport for somebody to see? At least a month, isn't it?
Yes, and see, that's the thing. Passport processing times can take anywhere from 6 weeks to maybe even 8 weeks.
There's an expedited, you pay extra, but I don't know how fast that is. But my point is, if you're going this summer, Mr. Overman, you need to find out what the rule is. If parents can have the absolute veto, then we don't, and I don't have any say so, then they just need to make plans and use respite. I hate that because I agree with you. They're old enough. I'm sure they would enjoy that trip, getting on a plane and going everywhere, going to those beaches and stuff would be a lifetime experience. But if
Your Honor, if I could just say this, I've been doing extensive research since last year, and it's my understanding that if the parents do not agree, that DFAC is able to override their decision. That's just based on my research.
I think even for travel out of the country that requires a passport, because I think they can overrule, they just don't want to.
Right. Yeah, it's my understanding for even out of the country travel.
Well,
Ms. Crane, do you have any information on that?
Yes. I was just waiting. So, Your Honor, two things. No, just one thing. Sorry. My client, Mrs. Lyle, when she surrendered her rights specifically to her parents, the waiting period for rescission in Georgia is now 4 days, not 10 days.
okay.
So after the 4, under the,
I'm losing you. You got a bad connection.
right. I'm sorry, Your Honor, I'm in your parking lot. So under the adoption laws and the current case law, Mrs. Lyle's rights vested in her parent. And so the only way that her rights would not be vested in her parent and revert to her to give her any authority to sign anything would be if the adoption is denied. So my position, I do represent Mrs. Lyles, but Mrs. Lyles doesn't have rights right now. So I don't think Mrs. Lyles would even be able to sign the parent consent affidavit. And I'm wondering if, because her rights are vested in her parents as to all 4 children, whether they could sign, because right now they have her parental rights, pending the outcome of the adoption.
Your Honor, if I may, I don't know if the court's leaning toward making a decision on this issue, but this is the first time.
We'll have to schedule a hearing and
Okay, thank you.
give people to have an opportunity to have notice that we're going to be talking about it. This is kind of it's been sprung on me. I didn't know it was an issue till today. And I certainly haven't done any research and have never had the deal with a passport come up before. I have had out-of-state travel before, and and when parents object, I have a hearing and let everybody tell me, and then I rule. But we got to be doing it pretty soon. But we don't need to bother if there's no chance. If I don't have the authority to override the parent's wishes or the substitute parent to whom the rights were terminated, that makes sense to me, but I don't have anything to base that on except that Ms. Crane always impresses me, even when she's dead wrong. Jeez.
Because you have to speak with conviction, Your Honor, even when you're wrong.
Well, y'all need to be looking at that quickly, and so we can get it on the calendar. I'm going to be gone most of next week, and anyway, but we'll find time to hear it as quickly as we can. We can certainly do it on Zoom to accommodate people being spread out everywhere. But they may not. I mean, if there's nothing for me to hear, then there's nothing for me to hear.
And Judge, I will check with the state and the state office and see if they have any suggestions.
Anybody else have questions for Mr. Moore or Mr. Lyles?
No, sir.
No,
Your Honor, I do have a couple of questions for Mr. Lyles.
Go ahead.
Thank you. All right, Chris, can you tell us a little bit? I know you said to the judge what your business is, but can you just tell us about a little bit of the work that you've been doing since you got out of prison on September 18th?
I mean, it consists of painting, remodels, flooring, roofs, gutters.
And let me be more specific, Chris. I don't mean just like the labor that you're doing to have a steady income. I mean the work that you're doing to keep your kids happy.
So I have been, I guess, given the honor at Chattanooga Primary Boys School. They have me come and speak to kids in whole classrooms, and some kids that are in middle school going through problems, they had me come the other day and sit down and have one-on-ones with them just to encourage them on decision making, give them a little bit of testimony about my past. It's through officers that work for the Chattanooga Police Department. I guess that's been the biggest thing I've achieved since I've been home. I guess if that's the work you're referring to, I'm able to impact kids' lives around the age I started falling off.
So is it sort of like a mentorship program where you're trying to talk to at-risk boys to help them avoid the path that you took?
In a sense, but it's not a program. Technically, I just do it on my own time. They've just asked me personally to come up there because they know my past.
And who asked you?
East Ridge officer that he actually met me while I was doing time years ago.
And Chris, you spoke to one of these kids on one occasion. Did they video kind of the speech that you gave?
They videoed me speaking to several classrooms. Yes, I spoke to classrooms at two eighth grade classes and 11th and 12th grade boys also.
Your Honor, we have about a 24-minute video that I provided to Mr. Overman, Ms. Schrock, Ms. Crane, and Ms. Gaskell. I gave it to them about 2 minutes before 8 o'clock, so I don't know that anybody's had an opportunity to review it. But we would like to just kind of submit that for the court's consideration. If not today, we may be submitting it in June during that hearing, just so that everybody can kind of hear Chris's whole story and see where he's at.
Okay.
But that's all the questions I have, Your Honor. Thank you, Chris.
Anybody else?
No, Judge.
No, sir.
Your Honor, I just have one question for Mr. Law,
Go ahead.
or maybe more than one. It might be two parts. Mr. Lyles, are you aware of the petition for permanent custody that your grandmother filed for your 2 children that are in her care?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Are you opposing that, Mr. Lyles?
No, ma'am.
So you're okay if those children go into her care on a more permanent basis?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
And Judge, may I inquire of Ms. Crane? That's kind of sad, but I don't know that I have seen that there was a petition filed for
There was a
that.
motion filed a while back, but there was never any seeking to intervene. So there's no standing to ask for something like that till they intervene. And I haven't allowed anybody to intervene as a party.
That's what I was
Right.
asking, Judge, if it's something in Superior Court or here in Juvenile Court.
Well, they could have filed something in Superior Court, but there's a motion for permanent custody that Ms. Hatfield filed. But I put it in the file with all that was going on and the fact that she had not sought to intervene. Maybe Ms. Hatfield thought she was a party, but she's not.
Right.
And Attorney Overman, I did forward that to you and Miss Whaley on, I think, Thursday or Friday,
Okay.
so that you could see it. But the court is correct. There was no intervention filed with that petition, and it is asking for permanent custody through the juvenile court, not on transfer from the Superior Court.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
And I don't have the authority to give permanent custody to anybody. So,
Right.
well, let me back up. I have the authority to give permanent custody to the department upon termination of parental rights. And I think I may also have authority in the event of a termination to give permanent custody to a third party to facilitate permanency. But otherwise, I don't think. There's a permanent guardianship provision, but it requires different pleadings and
Right.
different elements of proof. All right. Let me get my checklist done before somebody else thinks of another question. All right. The department has made reasonable efforts to facilitate permanency. Anybody contend there's any material portion of the case plan that has not been implemented or attempted to
No,
be
Your Honor.
implemented?
No, Your Honor.
No, sir.
Any legally required services that need to be provided that haven't been provided, foster parents, children?
No, Your Honor.
No, Judge.
No, Your
No,
Honor.
sir.
Both parents still have concurrent case plans. Is that right?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Judge.
They remain appropriate.
Yes.
Yes, Your Honor.
Mom is choosing, well, I'm sure she's visiting with the 2 that are, well, they're not with her parents, so I don't know that she's visiting any of the kids. The testimony was that visitation is sporadic. So it's not as the department would like it to be, but that's on Mom. And Mr. Lyles told me that he's seeing the 2 kids at his grandmother's pretty much when he has time to do it, which is on a regular basis. And he's seeing, I think you said you see the children who are with the Hemmings at least once a week. Is that what you told me?
Sometimes once a week, once every other week.
Okay. All right. I'd like you to see them all your kids every week. But sounds like you've got a busy schedule getting on your feet with, I I don't think I've ever met any person in the construction business that had expertise, and I don't think there's any area of home building that you don't have expertise in. So, did you get those skills in prison, or did you have them before you went to prison, or did you just make them up?
I had some skills before I went to prison, and I got a good team that works under me.
Oh, so you've got some all those areas of expertise are not you personally. You've got somebody that helps you, like with the roofing versus the flooring versus, the other stuff.
Correct.
Okay. Well, so you don't do any of the work. You just tell people what to do.
No, I work on every job.
Teasing you, Chris. I couldn't resist. I have a feeling you're a good worker.
Yes, sir.
If you'll stay sober, are you doing that?
Yes, sir.
Have you been clean since you got out in September?
Yes, sir.
Well, I'm going to tell you, it sounds awfully odd. And when I have people that show up and they tell me that they can't get hair from any part of their body because they've shaved themselves clean, that is a major red flag for me, because people know, I mean, you can go on the internet and read about it, but people know about drug screening and drug tests, and they know about hair follicle. And that is a major way people dodge a hair follicle test, is to shave everything.
They won't take it just from anywhere. That's the problem.
Well, but why would you shave everywhere? If you
No, the notes are incorrect, Your Honor.
So your whole body is not shaved clean?
No.
Okay. Well, I have been told in years past that they can take it from places besides your hair. There may be certain technicians who don't want to go to other places to get it. I don't know, but I've never been told they could not take it if it was long enough and it had a root in the skin, the follicle there under the skin, that they could take it from other locations. But I've never done it. I've never watched it being done, but I'm glad you're telling me you're staying clean, and you know better than anybody sitting here that is mission number one for you in life in general, with or without your children, because you've been to the pits when you're not sober, right? You know how your life can unravel, and did unravel. And are you receiving any mental health treatment?
I see a doctor on like Zoom once a month.
Does he provide medication for you?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I think in times past you had been on mental health meds. And listen, it's not any, you seemed hesitant to answer that, but I deal with folks who have co-occurring parents in these cases, who have co-occurring issues with drugs and alcohol and mental health, which is a double whammy. And I think you know that firsthand. But that doesn't mean that that you're any less capable. You just got to do what the doctors tell you to do to treat both. And of course, you got to stay clean. You can't be messing with any controlled substances. But you need, if you're taking meds for depression or bipolar or whatever they've given you a diagnosis for, you just need to take them like they tell you to take them. And it's not like an antibiotic that when you take it 10 days, you've gotten rid of the infection and you don't have to take it anymore. That's not how mental health meds work, unfortunately. But for you to be in tip-top shape and have all the talents and skills that you have to be able to use all those, you've got to be sober, and you've got to be level-headed. And you've got to not let that anger streak get the best of you. And hopefully you have some skills about how to deal with that.
It's an everyday process.
Yep, and it will be. And that's a good part of the learning process, is that you've learned that it's a daily process and you keep working at it.
You're right. You're right.
All right. We don't have, none of the kids are yet. One's getting close to 12. I think she was 12 if I can add right. So nobody's 14 yet. And the department has already filed for TPR. So that's on the, let's see what that date is. June the 5th. So we're over a month away.
That's correct. Judge,
All right, y'all find out about this this passport and this out of country travel. Do you know, Mr. and Ms. Hemmings, so that does Jamaica require a visa where you have to have certain proofs of certain inoculations and shots?
No.
No, sir. They would just need the passport, and we'll take our placement letter, as well as we would really need something from the either DFACS or the court stating that we have permission to travel with them.
My son went to South America in high school, and we had to go all over the place going to weird doctors who gave inoculations for foreign travel. They have specialists that's all they do.
Right.
And-
But none are required for Jamaica.
Okay, good.
Good.
But it just takes extra time to get all that lined up. And
Right.
then to get the visa, you got to get the visa plus the passport. So no visa either?
No, sir. Just the passport.
All right.
Judge, may I inquire, does anybody know when has there been a final hearing set for the adoption and termination in Superior Court?
No, sir. Mr. Overman, there's a deadline that's been set for the home study to be submitted to the court, the home study on the Blues. And I know that there's a contractor working on their home study, and I think the due date is the first half of May.
Okay.
I
Thank you.
thought you said you'd intervened.
No, Judge, we have prepared an intervener, depending on what the court says there has been a request for DFACS documents, which we have filed. Some people say that's enough to get us in the court as a party. I disagree with that. We have to intervene to be a party.
Okay.
We can be heard with our motion to quash, but I think we still have to file an intervener, which we prepared, but we haven't done yet. That's the reason I was asking about a court date.
Yeah.
Honestly, I was surprised that Mr. Harding did not serve us.
I don't know him. At least I don't think I do.
He's with Maddox and Harding and Griffin, Judge. Billy Maddox.
March, what did mom sign these surrenders to her parents before or after you filed the TPR?
I think it was before, Judge.
All right, because I think they're invalid if she surrendered or if a parent attempts to surrender after you filed your termination. There's some change. There was a change in the law about that, and I don't remember exactly how it worked.
That is correct. You're correct, Your Honor. If the department files the TPR prior to parent surrenders, then the case law states that is an attempt by the parents to circumvent the authority of DFACS and the juvenile court. The mother did sign the surrenders prior to the TPR.
Okay. I had a case in Bucks County 30 years ago where I don't remember, the parents attempted to surrender to another couple who were not the foster to adopt parents, and I ruled them invalid, but that was long before that statute passed, so I don't remember what my basis. There was a case that was older than my case that said that could be, the court could invalidate it, and I did, and the Court of Appeals upheld it. Anyway, well, we've answered the checklist. So if there's nothing else, we'll adjourn this hearing, and I'll see y'all no later than June the 5th at the TPR hearing. But y'all need to get to me for them to have any hope of getting a passport for these kids. You need to be back here with your ducks in a row, probably the first week. Dependency matter that's been with us for a long time, July of 2018. At a specially set hearing today on an objection to a notice of placement change filed by Henry DFACS on the children. We're conducting the hearing virtually using Zoom. Mr. Lyles, I need you to get in one place and be still for us, okay? Crane, who's the attorney for the mother, Alicia Lyles, his manager, Mr. Moore, is here. The attorney and guardian ad litem for the children, Ms. Rock, who filed the objection to the placement change notice, who's here. Ms. Riddle is the attorney for Mr. Lyles. Mr. Lyles is here. The attorney for defense, paternal, Ms. Hatfield is here. Ms. Hatfield, an attorney from Covington filed some pleadings to intervene. Well, I don't know what's wrong. We were having this trouble going forever. Computer. I don't know if that. You planning to have your lawyer here with you, Ms. Hatfield?
She's in court this morning. She's going to try to get on. I believe she's talked to Megan, and Megan was going to.
Robin, can you do anything with Judge and his mic?
Judge Bartles, Miss Cooper, who represents Miss Hatfield, she just sent a text to me, and she said that she is waiting on calendar call in Superior Court, and as soon as she can get away from calendar call, she's going to log on.
Alyssa, is he frozen with you too?
Yes, he's frozen with me as well.
Okay.
But did you hear what I just said about Miss Cooper?
I did, and I was aware that she was going to try to get on. Do you know?
Yeah, I don't think she intends for us to wait on her or anything like that. I think she just wanted us to have an ETA, but I don't think she expects us to, suspend the hearing.
Right, and the intervener hasn't been heard yet, right? From Ms. Hatfield?
No.
Okay.
It's on the calendar for June 5th.
Yeah.
To terminate.
That's what I thought. So technically she's not a party right now, and I think her attorney can argue that she has a right to be heard. I'm sure one of you could call Ms. Hatfield. We may even call Ms. Hatfield.
Yeah, well, I'm going to call Ms. Hatfield, but I believe, and I haven't seen it, so I don't know if it's been filed, but I believe Ms. Hatfield has either filed an objection. I know you filed an objection, Ms. Riddle. So Ms. Riddle has an objection, and then I think Ms. Hatfield may have an objection as well that's been filed. According to Ms. Cooper, she was filing it.
Yeah, and the question is, without her intervening, can she object? I mean, she's placement, and I think she can be heard.
She can object as the placement. It says right on the placement form that she can object.
Right. I was talking about as far as the intervener. I know I think there was a filing or something going on she was asking for permanent guardianship. I don't know if you saw that, Alyssa.
Yes.
Okay. And Megan, I don't know if you saw that either.
Yeah, it's actually, the petition is styled a petition for permanent custody.
Is that what it is?
Yeah,
and of
that's
course,
what Judge Bartles mentioned in our last status update.
Yeah, but she did amend it. She did amend it to a petition for permanent guardianship, and she emailed that amended petition yesterday.
Got it.
Okay. And I think that's where Leanne comes in to do permanent guardianship. I may be wrong.
Yes, that's my understanding.
Okay. I'm sorry, Robin, if I know they're trying to fix this. Does he have anything the rest of the morning or afternoon? No, Robin didn't hear me. I think she's got her mic off. I mean, her voice off. Do you have to be in Superior Court, Elisa?
Yes.
I figured you did. Always works that way. And I'm supposed to be with Judge McGarity on the capital defender case.
And what are you doing in that case, Jack?
Oh, capital defender wants anything and everything we've got, records and otherwise. And they actually made a request that was unusual. When we provided the records, what we had, they pulled every name out of the records from 2015 and 16 of former case managers, everything else, and they wanted to know their whereabouts so they could interview them.
How fun for you.
Guess how many are left in Henry County?
0.
You got it. And so,
Whoa.
but actually, the state did an excellent job. They actually sent me a list last night of the 29 they asked for, and we've identified about over half of them and where they are. Not with DFACs. I couldn't believe they were able to do that. So I've got to be over there to explain to the judge, because they want that list. They want to be able to talk to them, et cetera, which I'm not sure Judge McGarity is going they're halfway through the trial right now. So I don't know what he's going to do. And Jonathan's downstairs with Kathy, with Judge Brown. So it's a busy time. I was just trying to figure out what we were going to do if they couldn't get the technology fixed. Of course, we can't move the children until such time as we have the hearing anyway, I don't think. But I know Bartle says he doesn't have anything Thursday or Friday of this week. And while we're waiting, Alyssa, do you remember?
No, I don't think so.
It may be Ann's case. I don't know. We're probably going to end up removing that child. He's at a facility, so we're probably going to do that.
Jack, just so you
Right.
know, this is being live streamed right now.
Okay,
Just
that's
FYI.
fine. Thank you. I forgot we were live. Never mind.
Well, we're going to try it again. We have a miracle worker in the IT department. As I was ready to bag it, this is on for a specially set emergency hearing following the department giving notice of their intent to make a placement change. And the guardian ad litem filed an objection. I understand the father's attorney also filed an objection. I haven't put my hands on that objection, but it's either en route or here somewhere. So we're on Zoom. The current foster care, relative foster placement, Ms. Hetfield is here. The guardian ad litem, attorney for the children, Ms. Schrock is here. Ms. Riddle, the attorney for the father, is here. The father, Christopher Lyles, is here. The case manager, Mr. Moore, is here. The attorney for defects, Mr. Overman, is here. Ms. Hatfield's attorney, Ms. Cooper, is here. That's what we were trying to iron out, Ms. Cooper, when you must have sabotaged our Zoom connection so we could wait for you to get here, because we were talking about what to do about you besides sending a posse. And you showed up after Alvin fixed the computer, or I think he's fixed it.
Your Honor, if I may, before we begin, I'd like to ask the court to excuse me from this hearing. My client, Alicia Lyles, has not appeared today. Well, I am not in the position to object or dissent either way on her behalf. And I believe the objection is best set out by the guardian ad litem, the father's attorney, so that I can attend the hearings. They're waiting for me downstairs.
Any objection to her being excused?
No
Judge.
objection.
All right, you're excused. Thank you, Ms. Crane. Who wants to go first?
Well, Judge, procedurally, I mean, we could, but I think it's their objection. I think Alyssa had that made objection. I think she goes, and then the second objection, Megan goes, I guess, and Ms. Cooper, however they want to do it, and then we can, we have the authority to change placement, and I think they're the ones that have to go forward to why otherwise.
Yeah, I'll go first.
Go ahead.
Mr. Moore, could I start with you? Okay. Mr. Moore, Jada is 11 years old. Is that right?
Yes.
And Jalen is 6.
Yes.
And both of these children have been in the department's custody since 2018. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
And when they entered care in 2018, they were placed with the maternal grandparents, Mr. and Mrs. Ballou. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
And they remained with the Balloos until 2021, when the department removed them from the Balloos home. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
And in 2021, at that time that they were moved from the Balloos, they were placed with Miss Hatfield. Is that right?
Correct.
And so they've been continuously in the care of Miss Hatfield since June of 2021. So going on close to 3 years. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
And Miss Hatfield is the father's grandmother. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And when Mr. Lyles, the father, when he was released from incarceration back in September of last year, he was actually living with Miss Hatfield for a couple of months initially. Is that right?
Right.
And then since then, he has obtained his own housing.
Yes, ma'am.
But he continues to visit with the children just about almost every day. Is that right?
From my understanding, yes.
Okay. In addition, the two siblings of Jada and Jalen, Jacob and Jordan, who are the twins, who are 2 years old, Jacob and Jordan come to Miss Hatfield's home every other weekend and spend Saturday night with Miss Hatfield so that they can have a visit with siblings every other weekend. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And up until a couple of days ago, when DFAC made the decision that they were going to be removing them from Miss Hatfield had been the intended permanent placement for these children. Is that right?
Yes.
There's a TPR petition that's been filed, and the hearing is scheduled for June. Is that right?
Yes.
And should that TPR be granted in June, as the department is seeking, the intention of the department would have been for Miss Hatfield to adopt or for her to obtain some sort of custody or guardianship. Is that right?
Correct.
In fact, at least for the past year or so, the department has been encouraging Miss Hatfield to obtain custody or guardianship of the children. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, so up until the decision was made to remove the children, the department then was of the opinion that the children are being well cared for in Miss Hatfield's home and wanted them to remain there permanently.
Correct.
All right. And Mr. Lyles, is his visitation, is it supervised or unsupervised?
So that's kind of the, so at one point, Ms. Hatfield was the person to kind of monitor the visits. The sibling visits were already in place when he got out. At one point, we did have a transporter every other Thursday take the twins up to have a parent visit with Mr. Lyles. So it's kind of like Ms. Hatfield plus our transporter was kind of monitoring the visits somewhat.
Right, because it, from all of the court reports that have been submitted by the department for the past couple of hearings since Mr. Lyles has been released, the visitation described for Mr. Lyles, as you just said, says monitored by Ms. Hatfield rather than that his visitation was supervised. And so is it accurate to say that the understanding was that it was Ms. Hatfield was to monitor his visitation? In other words, she had some discretion. Is that correct?
Yes, I would say that's correct.
I mean, she was never told, never leave these children unsupervised with Mr. Lyles for any amount of time. Was she told that?
No.
Okay. And in addition to the children being placed in this relative placement with their great grandmother, Miss Hatfield, in addition, up in that area in North Georgia, in the direct location where Miss Hatfield lives, is quite a bit of family members for these children. Is that right?
Correct.
They have they have a cousin that's been adopted by Miss Hatfield who resides in the home with them. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
And they have several other cousins and various relatives that they come in contact with on a regular basis due to living in the same area with Miss Hatfield. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So the decision to move them was made because Mr. Lyles spanked Jalen a couple of days ago.
Correct.
And to your understanding, did he spank Jalen on his bottom?
To my understanding, this particular time, yes.
And he used he used his hand to administer the spanking.
If I remember the investigator correctly, yes.
And were there any documented marks or bruises or injuries to the child?
Not from this particular time, no.
Is there some other time? Because I'm not aware of there being any other incident.
Yeah, so in the investigator summary, there was explained to be another time, but there was no specific time frame on the other time he got a spanking with a belt and said he had a mark on his leg. However, that this time around right here, there was no observed marks or bruises on the child.
Well, has the department known about this other incident?
No, this was all investigated at one time.
Okay. And you're aware that Jalen he doesn't express fear of his father, is that right?
Correct.
You're aware that Jalen is not wanting to be moved, fearful of his father, has any concerns about remaining in the care of his grandmother and having contact with his father. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And the same for Jada. Jada doesn't express any fear of her father, and she expresses no desire to be removed from her grandmother's home. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And then in regards to the other issue, I think that the department has brought as a reason why they want to move the children is because the day following the spanking, Mr. Lyles picked up Jalen from school. Is that right?
Correct.
And is it accurate that the school where Jalen attends, where his father went to pick him up, is less than a mile away from Miss Hatfield's home?
That's correct.
And again, as you stated earlier, Miss Hatfield had some discretion in the visitation that she allowed with Mr. Lyles.
Yes.
Per the instruction of defects, right?
Well, to answer your question, before Mr. Lyles was incarcerated, just to give a little more in depth, he was having unsupervised visitation with the kids. Once he was released in September, there was no set visitation change. So therefore, while they were in the custody of Ms. Hatfield, she was monitoring the visitation that he was having, but however, that was with Jada and Jalen. With the twins, we did do supervised contact again with the transporter taking the kids up there.
Oh yes, I understand that. I'm speaking strictly to Jada and Jalen, who are the subject of the change of placement. As it applies to Jada and Jalen, DFACS had not instructed Ms. Hatfield that Mr. Lyle's visitation needed to be supervised at all times, right?
Correct.
Okay. And Jada and Jalen are very much bonded with their grandmother, Miss Hatfield, who they've lived with for the past 3 years, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And I know that you have been the caseworker on this case for quite some time and are extremely familiar with this family. Do you feel that this would cause significant trauma to these two children to be removed from their grandmother where they believed that they would be permanently?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I don't have any other questions for Mr. Moore.
Anybody else have any questions?
Nothing from me, Your Honor.
Judge, if you want me to go ahead and put our case up now, or since Mr. Moore's under oath, or I can wait till after all the objections are noted on their record.
I'm okay with that.
Okay. Mr. Moore, excuse me. Let's talk about the history and the reason that the department wants to remove the child. First of all, the department has placement authority. Is that correct?
Correct.
And if the department feels that there's a safety concern for the children or any issues that way, That would be why we moved the children. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Try not to lead your client quite so much, Mr. Overman.
Well, that's why I asked, could I do this on cross judge, but that's fine. I understand. From the department standpoint, why have we moved the children? What are the concerns that the department has to moving the children?
Or are we planning to move the children? Is the question you're asking?
Yes.
Okay, so the spanking is one issue. The second issue was the fact that she allowed him to pick the kids up from school. And then the third issue was during the investigation, it was revealed that Christopher was living in the home. And so under the department discussion, it was a matter of how to keep the kids safe in the situation. So the only way that was discussed to keep them safe is to move them.
Okay.
Why didn't you ask Mr. Biles to move out if that was a safety concern? Wouldn't that be easier than moving the kids?
Mr. Lyles has established his own residence, Your Honor.
I thought you said you objected to Mr. Lyles living in the home.
He has established it. He don't live in the house with Miss Hatfield at this time. During the investigation,
maybe I misunderstood you, but I thought one of the concerns you just described was that Mr. Lyles was living in the home.
Correct. So during the investigation, it was discussed that he was living there. Since the investigation happened, he has established his own.
So he remedied that concern. So what other concern was there?
Yes,
the spanking?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So he was living in the home. He's remedied that. He's not in the home. And the spanking.
Yes, sir.
All right. Go ahead, Mr. Overman.
So from the department standpoint, was Miss Hatfield told about the corporal punishment and not to spank the child?
Yes, sir.
Okay. But it happened again, is that correct?
Correct. So she had a case last year around the same time where she spanked Jalen. They did a corrective action plan with her and explained that there's no spankings, and so we're a year later and Chris spanked the children. This time it wasn't Miss Hatfield. However, yes.
But she was aware that there was no spanking, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And where did the spanking take place? In Miss Hatfield's home? Or
It wasn't specified.
Was Miss Hatfield aware that Christopher had spanked the child?
She was aware that Jalen got the spanking. Yes, sir.
Okay. And as far as that issue, the department feels like the children strike that. Has there been any indication? I think Ms. Schrock asked that the children need to be moved for safety concerns, or well, strike that. Let's talk about Ms. Schrock's question about trauma to the children if they're moved. Has the department addressed that or getting ready to address that when the kids move?
If the children are moved, then we will put in counseling to address the trauma that they will get from the move.
So we're aware of the possible trauma and we have taken steps. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, are there any other issues with Ms. Hatfield as far as allowing Mr. Lyles to pick the children up, be with the children unsupervised? What's the issue there?
The only issue that arises from that is this was during the time of the investigation. So basically we had just found out about the issue, and then she allowed him to pick them up from school like following the investigation.
Okay. Did we ask Ms. Hatfield and Mr. Lyles about the living arrangements before? And what was their answer? He was living there, not living there?
So from my understanding, he wasn't living there. I knew he would be spending the night there, but in terms of living there, it was never established that he was living in the home. I think after the Catoosa County investigator questioned her a few times, that's when she said he sleeps at the house, and if that's what you mean by living here, then that's what it is.
So he was sleeping at the house,
Yes, sir.
but she didn't consider that living there.
I think it's because he wasn't there consistently.
Okay, well, that's good. So has the department found a placement to move the child?
Yes, sir. We have a possible placement.
I'm sorry, what kind of placement?
I said we have a possible foster placement.
So you do have a foster placement if we move the child. Is that what you're saying?
He said a possible placement 2 times. So that means to me he doesn't definitely have one.
That was what I was clarifying, Judge. Do you have a permanent placement or a placement for the children if you move them?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm sorry, Judge. That was my
and the reason why I say possible because if the kids are not already there, we have foster parents that change their minds. But as of right now, we have a foster parent that has said yes. So that's why I said possible.
Okay, so the department has safety concerns, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and you've identified those and we've taken care of, we have a placement for the children, correct?
Correct.
Okay, that's all I have, Judge.
Anybody have any further examination of Mr. Moore?
Yes, Your Honor, I do. Good morning, Mr. Moore. Mr. Lyles was released from prison in September, is that correct?
Correct.
And he didn't have anywhere to live, is that correct?
Correct.
And he went to go live with Miss Hatfield because that was the only place he could go.
Correct.
And you were aware of that.
Correct. We were aware that he was living with Miss Hatfield initially.
In fact, we addressed that issue with Judge Bartles because we were all aware that he was living with Miss Hatfield.
Correct.
And the department was telling him he needed to find somewhere else to live.
Correct.
And now that hearing was in about October. I don't have the date in front of me, but it was about October, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
And from October to April 29th, when we had a status update, at no point did the department send notice to move placement because Mr. Lyles was living with Miss Hatfield.
Correct.
And we just had a status update 2 weeks and 2 days ago, correct?
Correct.
And at that time, you testified to this court that Mr. Lyles was doing great and doing everything the department was asking him to do.
Yes, ma'am.
And now you're saying you have safety concerns.
Because at that time, we didn't know about the spanking.
And how did you become aware of the spanking?
Because it was a report made.
By who?
Well, we can't give out the reporter source, but we received the report through our call center.
And who did the investigation?
Catoosa County did the investigation.
Was that report by someone who's trying to adopt those children right now?
Can't answer that question.
Now, you've also testified that Miss Hatfield did not spank Jalen.
Not this time, no, she did not.
Okay, and you don't have any information that she saw the spanking happen. You're just saying that she knew about it.
Correct.
So the department is trying to remove placement from Miss Hatfield for a spanking that she did not commit.
If she allowed it to happen, then that's the safety concern.
And what evidence do you have that she allowed it to happen?
The fact that she knew it happened and the reason why it happened.
So are you saying that she said, go spank the children, go spank Jalen?
No, ma'am.
That's all the questions I have, Your Honor.
Anybody else? All right. Any other evidence? Anybody want to present?
I just quickly have a couple questions for Ms. Hatfield.
Okay.
Ms. Hatfield, like the court has been made aware of, you've had your grandchildren in your home for, it'll be 3 years this June. Is that right?
Correct.
and you've been taking care of all their needs. They're in school up there, they're in activities, they're in extracurriculars, they have friend groups there, they have regular contact with their cousins, their siblings spend the night in your home, all of that. Is that right?
Correct.
What, in your opinion, what would it do to Jada and Jalen if they were told they had to leave your house?
It would cause major, irreversible mental damage to these children. These children are taken care of, I promise you, probably better than any DFACS worker has. They are loved, they are taken care of, they go to activities, they're not beat. I have taken care of the grandchildren, the great-grandchildren, every one of them. Everybody, including Mr. Moore, knows how well these children are taken care of. They are not in any danger. They are not beat. They are not tortured. Nothing. They are very safe.
And Miss Hatfield, up until the department gave notice of this placement change, the department has been continuously asking you to make some kind of movement in court to get custody or guardianship of the children. They've been continuously encouraging you to do that. Is that right?
That is correct. And I did hire an attorney. And June the 5th, they were supposed to be giving me permanent guardianship or custody of these children. So DFACS and me or us would part, and we wouldn't have to go through all this torture continuously for no reason.
And if the department gave you some specific instructions about Mr. Lyle's contact with the children, his behavior with the children, if they gave you instructions, you would have no problem following any instructions that the department gives you. Is that right?
None. I have always done what they say. And Christopher, since he's got out, everybody should be thrilled to death of what this man has done. He is he's got his car paid for. He's bought a truck that's paid for. He's got a trailer that's paid for. He's got a home. He's put furniture in it. I haven't done that. He has done that. And y'all should be thrilled to death that he loves his children and wants his children and does everything for them.
Okay. And one last question, Ms. Hatfield. If the department were to have been granted their TPR that they're asking for this June, if they were granted that TPR, you would have either adopted these children or taken some sort of permanent guardianship custody of them so that they could remain with you permanently. That was the plan, correct?
Correct.
Okay, I have no other questions.
Anybody else have any questions?
No, Judge.
No, Your Honor.
Any other evidence?
Judge, if I may speak, we this morning filed a petition for permanent guardianship that has all the statutory requirements met. I had to file it in person this morning, so I don't know that everybody has seen that, but that is pending before the court.
All right.
And I don't have any other evidence, Your Honor. I just wanted to make some argument before we conclude.
Sure.
I understand that this court doesn't have placement authority, and what I'm at, and in that, because of that, I'm asking for this court to give Ms. Hatfield custody of the children. I think it's absolutely egregious to contemplate removing these children because of a spanking when this was an intended permanent placement for these two kids that have already endured so much trauma and have been in the department's custody since 2018. And for the department to say, oh, we'll just give them counseling if we have to move them is preposterous. It is not in their best interest to remove them. The spanking does not warrant a change of placement for these children, and it is absolutely not in their best interest. And Ms. Hatfield has demonstrated over the past 3 years that she is more than capable, has the resources, the willingness, the ability, everything that is needed to not just meet their needs, but to provide them with a loving home where they have extracurriculars, they're doing well in school, they have friend groups, they have constant contact with their relatives. And not only that, she's maintained the sibling bond by having the siblings in her home every other weekend. So it's would be in the children's best interest if this court transfers custody to her at this time.
Anybody else want to be heard in by way of argument or response?
Judge, from the department standpoint, I think Ms. Schrock is correct. All the evidence that I've seen in case law says that we have placement authority. If you want to do direct placement, if you you can remove the children from our custody and do as you please as far as giving custody to somebody else, permanent guardianship. Of course, temporary custody, I don't think you can give permanent custody. That has to come from Superior Court. However, if you want to do a direct placement to her, give her permanent guardianship, whatever the case may be, I think the statute allows that, or change the permanency plan. But basically, that would be your authority instead of our placement. I understand Ms. Schrock's argument, and the department's issue is safety. And if the court determines that it wants to take custody from us and do permanent guardianship to them, we don't have any authority to deny the court from doing that. But that's my understanding of the law and the way it works. I think Ms. Schrock is correct on that.
Anybody else?
No, Your Honor.
All right, the court finds that the evidence presented is insufficient to authorize the department to make a placement change. Under the statute, is presumptively contrary to the child's, and the court does find as fact that it would be detrimental and harmful to both children to be moved after being in their current placement for over almost 3 years. And the court can presume and does presume by statute that the continuation of the placement with Ms. Hatfield is in their best interest, and that the department's decision to move them constitutes a lack of reasonable efforts to facilitate permanency under their already promulgated case plan. And so the court is forced to award temporary custody of the children to Ms. Hatfield, and the department has to continue to provide reunification services under the concurrent case plan to the father under the existing case plan. And I don't know whether mom I don't think she's participating in any whatever reunification efforts have been attempted, so I'm not as concerned about her. But Ms. Schrock, you can take an order to that effect. This is temporary custody. She has to cooperate with the department in their efforts to reunify with the dad, and we'll deal with the newly filed guardianship petition and their intervention and all of that stuff. I think I had intended to hear the I don't know what I intended. I think I think I told the clerk I'd hear it all when we had the TPR, but I might need to at least deal with the intervention ahead of that. I'd hate for Ms. Cooper, who's so hard to get to court anyway, to get her there for naught if I didn't let her intervene. So I'll try to get with the clerk and set a date prior to that.
We would request that, Judge, if you could set the permanent guardianship hearing before the TPR instead of doing it twice.
Well, I was going to hear the guardianship at the same time I heard the TPR, because a lot of the same evidence would be germane to the issue of the permanent guardianship, because I can't grant a permanent guardianship unless I find that reunification is no longer viable. And so the evidence that your department would have would be germane to that issue. But I'll think about it, but I'm more concerned about the intervention issue being resolved. What is the status of, y'all have told me about this case filed by the other grandparents. I thought it was about the other two children, but now I'm beginning to think that it's about all four children.
It is about all four children. My understanding, Judge, is the adoption and TPR is about all four children, if I'm not, and I know if Leanne may know about that. But
Well, has DFACS intervened in that?
We've drafted an intervention. They just asked for our records right now, is all they've asked for. So they haven't set it for hearing that I'm aware of yet.
No, it's still pending before Judge Amaro.
Yep.
Well,
That's my understanding.
Don't you think somebody ought to let them know that there's other stuff going on about these kids? I mean, because if I were in his shoes and there was something else going on that would mean that that's one less case I have on my caseload, I'd want to know about it. Now, I'm not saying that trumps it or makes it go away or what, but it certainly would seem to be an argument that, and I really don't understand why. I thought even in an adoption petition, you still had to give under oath that information about other pending litigation about children.
Mr. Harding is handling the adoption slant TPR in Superior Court, and he's aware of our involvement here. And as I say, we drafted a motion to intervene in that case, and I think it's statutorily, since we have temporary custody, or we have the children in our care, even the two you've given temporary custody to now, that we would be heard. He's aware, Judge Amaro is aware of what's going on down here, but through Mr. Harding and asking for our records. But I don't disagree, Judge. You don't need to have two cases going at one time. Of course, you can't do the adoption, I know, but
No.
Certainly from a TPR standpoint, if we've got a TPR going, filed, I think I don't know what he would do with that. I don't know what you think he would do that. He may want to hear it all at one time, do the TPR and the adoption without letting anything come to juvenile court.
All right. Well, if you prepare a proposed order and circulate it, Ms. Schrock, and so
Yes,
the,
sir, I will.
so in case there's any doubt, the proposed move has been kiboshed. The kids will stay at Ms. Hatfield's, and they're now in her temporary custody. If you need me to sign a shelter care order until you get that drafted, you can send it to me. I'm going to be out of town Friday, but I will be here. I'll be tied up in court most of the day tomorrow and this afternoon, but you can get it to me and I'll sign it and get it back
Yes,
to
sir,
you.
I will do that.
And we would request that, Judge, if she could do that.
All right. Thank y'all for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Your Honor.
Judge.